President Trump has confirmed that he authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations inside Venezuela. It follows a series of U.S. military strikes on boats in the Caribbean Sea that Washington alleges were smuggling drugs. The Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, said there should be no CIA-led coup against his regime. Correspondents say Venezuela plays a relatively small role in the region's drug trafficking network. They say it doesn't produce drugs, but is more of a transit route for some traffickers. As such, most people in the country believe that the primary aim of these U.S. operations is to target President Maduro himself and try to essentially oust him from power by multiplying military pressure on him. The US has long described him as the head of a cartel network, something he denies.
I authorized for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And as soon as I heard that, I said, a lot of these countries, they're not the only country, but they're the worst abuser. And they've entered they've allowed thousands and thousands of prisoners, mental institution, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, emptied out into the United States. We're bringing them back, but that's a really bad, and they did it at a level that probably not, many countries have done it, but not like Venezuela. They were down and dirty. And the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela. And a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that. But we're going to stop them by land also.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given.
No war, just peace on the people of the United States. Please. Please, please, please. ¿Cómo que se dice, oigan? Listen to me. Not war, just peace. The people United States. No a los golpes de Estado dados por la CIA.
No to the coups carried out by the CIA, which remind us so much of the 30,000 disappeared by the CIA in the coups against Argentina, the Pinochet coup, and the 5,000 young people killed and disappeared. How long will the CIA coups continue? Latin America does not want them, does not need them, and rejects them. So peace is won. I have no doubt. Peace is preserved.
The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, there. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskowicz. Good to see you, Dr. Laskowicz. Is all this public rhetoric meant to psychologically telegraph a message to Venezuela about drug trafficking, or do you think it's a real attempt to dislodge President Maduro?
I think it's the latter myself. Also, the problem is that many Latin American countries, of course, over the past have embraced socialist politics, which Donald Trump doesn't like. It's not just about Venezuela. It's really a message to the whole of Latin America that America is back in charge. No more open doors, open frontier policy. Biden is gone. America, and it's like the old days. And as indeed it was said, many coups were directed by CIA, not just these, but many others in Latin America. And America has that ability and presumably wishes or is thinking of doing once more. There is another aspect to this. Venezuela isn't a soft target. And what President Donald Trump is showing also here is that America is prepared to use force. Actually, his use of force is entirely questionable. Were Russia to do this, the world would be up in arms, because the people who were killed on this craft, there's no trial of any sort. There's no identification. To be quite honest, they could have been pleasure craft for all the rest of the world knows. We assume that the Americans have targeted the right people, but it's a far cry from any real justice. And so there's this aspect. And this goes back to, of course, the Russian war and the Tomahawks and Hamas. He's showing here that he is a decisive president prepared to do things militarily. and Venezuela is a very convenient target in this respect.
Indeed, I will return to what you mentioned at the outset there, because I think that's very interesting. But how much of an escalation would it be if the US started carrying out missile strikes, as we've seen them do in international waters, but this time on land and on Venezuelan territory?
I don't think it'll come to missile strikes. The American-led coups haven't gone in that direction at all. Certainly not American missiles used by Americans. If there were to be a coup, it would be by disaffected portions of the army or the armed forces in Venezuela. That's the more usual way of doing it, Americans prefer. If American missiles were used in Venezuela by Americans, that is an act of war, to be quite honest. And already President Donald Trump has succeeded in going virtually out of his way to ensure that America has few allies, and it will be fewer soon, since obviously what is targeted against Venezuela could just as easily tomorrow be Mexico. The same logic applies. As for other countries emptying out their prisons, Cuba did this before. So obviously Cuba is a target. I mean, if you're going to go down that route, and President Donald Trump seems to be going that, he will succeed in turning the whole of Latin America against him, just as he has succeeded in cutting himself off from Western Europe.
Right. So, I mean, there is, though, Dr. Laskovich, a more watertight justification for all this, isn't there? Which is that almost everybody, without exception, in the international community believe President Maduro lost the most recent election by a significant margin. Is there not scope for diplomacy to try and ease him out, or does Maduro not seem at all willing to countenance his own departure soon?
I can't see him countenancing his own departure. For a start, no politician likes to lose power. And secondly, if you lose power, something unpleasant may happen to you afterwards. So there's a double reason for that. I mean, we've seen the pleasantest aspect will be for Donald Trump himself, who, like Netanyahu, the moment he steps down, will face criminal charges. In this case, it will be more charges from his opposition that, as you rightly say, there are questions, to put it euphemistically, about the election. Rather, if they are plotting a coup, then this means that there's fertile ground for this, because the opposition feel they should have won. But I don't see him stepping down voluntarily, no.
So just to be ineluctably clear, talking about the flow of drugs and going after drugs gangs, that is not enough justification. The cartels, in your assessment, are really not intertwined with the regime in Venezuela, as Mr. Trump claims, and all this is just a smokescreen, because, I mean, some say the so-called relationship with these cartels doesn't exist, but is just some members of the regime turning a blind eye to smuggling. But when it comes to them being connected to organized crime gangs, that simply won't stand up to scrutiny.
Yeah, the problem for us, looking from the outside, is that it's very difficult to tell whether he's involved in some way. It's that simple. We simply don't have the information here in the media to be able to work this out. What we can say is the following. There is indeed some drugs coming from Venezuela. But why pick on Venezuela and say not Mexico or other countries? If you see my point, there's no obvious reason why Venezuela should be singled out in this way. Secondly, if drugs are being smuggled into the USA has a huge fleet. It has radar and spy satellites, which, and including presumably now drones as well, which are way sufficient to stop the flow of drugs. There's neither a need to missile the boats, nor is there certainly a need to take down the regime until it is proven. And Donald Trump is just not interested in proving things. He has said that the president there is linked with the drugs cartel, and that's all he's going to be interested in. It's in case of him being judge and jury.
Well, absolutely. It certainly does sound like that. And just returning to that point you made at the outset, Dr. Laskovich. I mean, it feels a bit like the old days, doesn't it? Which you know very well about and have touched on in some of your books. I mean, the 1980s, US involvement in Latin America, covert CIA operations. Does it feel like a return to that, a sort of reassertion by President Trump of the Monroe Doctrine?
Yes, absolutely. That's part of MAGA, isn't it? Make America Great Again. That was what America did since World War II. Basically, before then, Great Britain was the key power in much of Latin America. But as a result of World War II, America took over. And there have been a whole series of coups, not just the ones mentioned by the president of Venezuela. And in each of these coups, America is this huge big brother acting to defend its interests at all costs. And there were indeed casualties of these coups, although it has to be said that in Latin America there are casualties from drugs, wars, and so on as well. However, it is unquestionably a result here of America's reasserting itself, that it sees Latin America as its backyard. And of course, many Latin Americans are unenthusiastic about this, to put it mildly. But there you are. America is an extremely strong country. And until someone else comes on the Latin American side, we'll be able to do what it likes there. And this is indeed what is happening now.
Well, good to have the benefit of your analysis. Once again, thank you very much indeed, Dr. Marek Laskovich. He is the author and international affairs analyst talking to me on the line there from London.